to love. Since science ratified that cup, our paper fondness nothing truly gives, and still less changes. And yet it lives, disordered on a failing lip which trembles though it won't give up this carved line where our voices dip. The trace of what these limits lick is history. Coruscations hit the edges grain, the years alive, the sensitive intelligence. What moves one to a nuance, and which rising proves alone again, then stoops to gaze askance upon one severed hip. All else falls short without myself, from which I miss. How then to love away from this? Hormonally, I conceive before the fact. That's true of loving and of loving true. And since cliches of sex and death are through, it's not the way we love right now, a lot like that. My old suspectability is wrapped in plastic. I've an odd tense for renewing that age-old female tact to learn by doing, so each becomes her own auto-dictat. But further now from where the first contact was struck, I don't care. I hoped to wait a while to write what's yet to do in love, but look at how my print is wrapped so through his arms make space in this embrace to seek the handle of a hold I chase. Our doubts are traitors mostly, I agree, though can't presume a theme of civil war, and where there's no authority, less so, far more the case it isn't just to justify a lack of faith or trust. More fundamental doubts persist, which dedicate to one insist on going back to search again for suspects that I might have kissed. I want to lay my heavy head at the apex of your head and shoulder, calling collar, collar, to sleep at once, to speak in one word answers, to live and live and live, and still the while be silent. Feeling a lot like Shelley must have felt, the fulsome boys defying on a grassy bank outline a Celtic picture of the current state of things. The poetic carcass of a girl then enters, and without their turn to look, toward against the forces of an adamantine book, the dead men's fingers ranged in rings then took melodious song among such vanquishings of Ophelia, whomsoever swam or sank, regardless, banishing herself, this is no help. The not you won't complete me, do not disturb, I'm working, she said, word, he said. Then out into the street he went, all hyacinths she lent him led to atrophy, and all the books he lent her fed apostasy, so then she knew that art is never neutral, and to sing of love italicizes everything. The Dante scholar is only after one thing. He said, just like all lovers do, she said, I am a lover too. Content while dancing distends to lateness, although that law is out which recommends the one left wasting is the one who bends, whose fault it isn't, you don't know, who else hourly is or how this 116th sonnet ends. I know no pair of feet will tend exactly so much, depends on how it goes, I don't know, in the dance ends. Let's close our eyes to the ticking lay going over grey ground by finger and thumb. There is quite enough to be going on to label poor day, but one remove. And what is distilled we palpitate the always already imbued. To auscultate the thing, a slightly listless Greek runs barbed wire rings. Oh sweet is this first rounding of a song made over in the late February sun. The night is followed by the afternoon. Chance nerve collision with a bicycle this morning called for a decision. Yawning left me dead-handed, grey smearing on the window bounded by mute tulips of display. When I came to you, milk-and-eyed, the 12 bark, travelling out across the corrugations, it seemed absurd to write an ode to elbow room. Heidegger's scientist routinely bore the crowd to tears with iron eyes and diamond saw aversing ears. And of the rest, the artist seemed the best placed to resist. Philosophers making mantric lists, aching for what we know this too, although no poem of crippling beauty yet exists to shout that we should fight for what we love, not what we do or do not get. The O that's just about to drop a short way off from where we lie, the window open on the street, peers through a schism, darkly, only, life going on. To recognize what takes us home again, our whole lives, requires great courage. A love I can't imagine, only know. The tenderness he makes in me and tells me after of. This morning, the landscape of our Eden years intends our bones. The perimeter of this market town, all that is known. The daubing on the pavements, these ancient palimpsestic streets, the eschatology of one will write. Meantime, the late residual excoriates the never deadline ripples of experiential decline, which, terminating in a feast already as flat as the rest of the East, traffics with the birds against the sun. The population count for words already landed, not altercations built on sand, is out, so voting with my feet, I come to understand the rhythm of a living heart against a living hand. The aftertaste of things denied is coming home again to bells unrung. A pint of my own spit will do for what became habitualized, externalized, and still undone. It's not the same as plans derided, a sudden knowledge of a faulty lung. What sung architecturalizes new kinds of work, recovering an ardent dare to build Paris on earth. Past half terraces, all that bunking and becoming, aware of day-glow the grocer's butchers, I know this car park, gave my description in the statement, standing on the walk outside our old house, Newtonian frost mistook the blossom for bathos, if we still lived as we do now, switching the kettle to on. I went out stupidly without my coat, so didn't stay there very long, but left this note, please meet me by the bandstand, Hill Park, Salford, 1931. I'm going to read a very small poem, which I haven't read before, so we'll see. It's called After the United States, the United States, for Ian Heames. Can you guys hear me okay? I wonder if I keep moving back. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Okay. After the United States, 1. Official subjects of the deepest rolling news that stays on the surface, the reception noisily captures. Like oil, the news decays. The bodies were burnt. After they frayed, particles blown by current, snatches, match of the day. 2. New research into bone immunity, the physiology of the Sino-K, an attack on our community. The presses are incendiary, say. No confirmation from the Marine. A unity gathers the forces of information. No confirmation yet from the Marine. Inordinate loss. Ordinary reticination to toss an artificial flower. 3. Laser fall across my goggles, the punctum indolently boss. The sea throws again redolently. Our sole enemy attacked, now rollingly shot, changes tack. Who in the first flowering of war attacked? What is attacked now fills our hours anew. 4. The water-resistant flower at the appropriate hour has dutifully done. its leaves homespun as keen grass, the barely audible hum of man falling from the 50th, 10th, or second floor become official subjects of the rolling deep. So, I was really pleased when you asked me to read for a little longer than usual because I want to try this. I'm writing a long poem, longer poem, in Italy where I'm living right now, and it's sort of becoming quite difficult to handle. So I'll give it a go. This is called In the Square. I'd like to read the first 401 lines of it, if that would be okay. It's got various epigraphs. I'll read them. The first is, La mia pittura molto dipende ormai Giovanni, il mio onore non sendo in loco bon, né io pittore, which is basically from Michelangelo Buonarroti when he's painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling. My dead picture defend Giovanni and my honor. I'm not in a good place, neither am I a painter. And the second one is from Umberto Boccioni. La verità nell'arte è l'unità di una cosa con se stessa, esterna è espressione di ciò che è interno, which is taken from Wilde. And third is from Pierre Bourdieu, The Tradition is Silent. Lake milk makes mornings in us, dripping flowers and hurt by the world. I launch a fleet of birds and defying joy from behind the impossible door. Vines moving in time snake across to the cypress screen as fixed and dead. A swan locks its wings as a phantom craft lies on the water brought to a point. The spider ties with a golden thread. Far from knowing what to do about this, perhaps we have all seen beautiful things. Not to oneself the blue of the sky drops like a mercy exempt in the street, made on behalf of the deaf and the dumb. Snug in the soul makes one trip on the stones. Prizing the object live and unsung, charting a flight for the transitive mood, drum roll a hand on the keyboard stand, poetic effort to let the day in. After the clashes, return to the scene, in the square where the door of the still hall swings, and the curtain which severs the dark is silent. Without a hush on the steps is falling, as light which cuts from the sky transcends occurring, always downloading. A great white mist occupies the town, cannot be caught by the hair and held down. As to the millions of self-arrested, the special branch had very few answers. As writing occurring removes from speeches, speaking occurring removing relates. A witness walking in the space reports. To explain this relation, a think tank released an official statement referring to acts in the square in the town where the door still swings. 1,000 desks were arranged as altars. Under the eaves of the roof it was written. At times interjections like "oh" were employed. Spam points at chicory, hamburgers for coffee. Blasphemes a heretic, calls spam a fascist. Spam not like ham as ham really believing, gathered a gaudy young hand to a fist. Spam replaced cup upon saucer as fitting, fixed with his eyes the stones in the square. And after all, what is the subject to stand on? The end of the day is what we go home to, back to the crypt and the reeking altars. I love the language, that hard bastard Latin. Analogize this is a very large sandwich. Take, for example, the age of machines, the power of the word to conjure the thing, the power of the word to abjure the thing, the fallible fact that all words lead to Rome. The exceptional, utterly particular truth is, one stood on the chink of hell and looked. By a primitive act of crude anthropology, the camp was arranged in the world like a ring. Analysis carried out at the center suggests a structure is still haunting Europe. So hearted I walked in the city square, till language like a mist cast over, lips which have never printed speech, between the banks of glowing meat, apparent in the wet black crowd. These are the many We are the few. Language will always be bigger, and you must eat or be eaten, and one must eat. One constitutes oneself the tribunal. One begins by putting oneself on trial. After the event described by those to whom it was told, who did not see, two bodies occupy the same space. The sun, receding, astonished, hangs still. The sea, dividing in two to make way. The creature, scratching beyond its grave. The blind, who seeing they could not see. The lame, understand, who could not walk. As a man soon cured from a fever asks, rain falls outside as a rule of nature. Above and beyond the dead flesh intense. To forgive is to take an advanced position. To err is to be as any old human, stretching to take the rope from his wrists. Jars when he feels that the cords are tied fast. Backing his way up, discovers a post. Shrieks when he sees the bloody saliva sneaking down over his chest with his arms. Acts as a cow is released from the altar, shaking the ill-aimed axe from its neck. Since the siege and assault was ceased in Troy, things have been pretty quiet in the square. After the headlines read by stony faces, after the exchange of silence in cafes, after the interest felt in many places, staff will return to work tomorrow. The forecast is understood to be good. At the time of writing, the streets are deserted, except for the poet and the museum men, the guide and the group of white alabasters who cast for the lab, the scream and the stone. Then, when the cardinal failed to observe, the air was filled with helium balloons. Far from the shout and grammar of a crowd, dealing out slights with trapezoid ease, tapping out counts on the tabletop, shuddering lines while he wept out of time, nicked his lip at the envelope edge. Something further having entered the room, paused to alloy for the chant going up, fell as a shot clears a space in the wood. When the girl who had knelt by the step unbent her form and raised one smiling face and turned one hand and gave herself deep fascia, drawing the hook of a cradle, outstretched arms with pentelican grace, the stuff less dense at the very edge caught the light at the fingernail's eve, and the hairs which had covered the back of her neck neither bristled nor fell for that long cold pass through the leaves to the west, where a rude young man in an old stolen sash keeps an eye on the floor from the edge where he is, so likes to turn around his head and to extend a hand as the night turns on and the stars which veer out of mind, out of sight, at the edge of the awning, lashed to his post and waiting, still yawns for the gape which he caught from the mouth of another in the hours before dawn, illusions cast in a primitive light, likeness made on the opening night. The stones which tripped were of polished gold. 1,000 cubic zirconium pixels flecked the light from the gaseous spheres, burning a path to the transparent portal, chasing the shadows back to the hems. Turns and conditions depend on the act, subject to change to a collapsible hat out of the light and into the fact, to spin on one's heel on the balls of the ball. So the beginner, in borrowed robes, lays out the cloth for the little black dress, chalks out the line for the waist and the arms, hums while she tacks the pins from her mouth, tricks to the steps of the latest hit record, talks with a Roman slur on the corner, changes her shoes to the sake of her father, last in the theatre along with the others, shortens her name in the rage for another, translating it back to our old mother tongue. Nothing today at Piazza Nessuna. Single A road breaks away through the square. Petrol pumps, but all dishandled. Q is attempting this, backed up for miles. View pans solely the tops of the buildings. People afloat on the roofs of their vans, stretch on two legs on a par with the branches, taking the fruit down a hand at a time, passing a knife around bruising red oranges. Face, which was peeled away like a mask, passed by the way into barbarous lands.